Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. BluedragonFive here,
And Rohith Dhar here.
and welcome to our Black Adam Spoilercast. That's right, folks. We've seen the most recent offering from DC while there's chaos at Warner's, more so HBO Max, but I think just kind of the chaos is kind of spread to the company overall. We're living in uncertain times, but one thing we do know for sure out of all these shakeups is that Black Adam is coming out this year, and assumedly so is Shazam 2.
It's coming out March 2023.
That's what I was. See, that trailer threw me off. It's like, wait a minute, why are we advertising this now? Obviously, because Black Adam's in the movie. But you're right. The only certainty we have this year is that Black Adam's coming out, and it did. The only certain thing this year, apparently. So, so we finally saw the movie. I myself, a little trepidatious about this, not in seeing it, but in kind of like some fears with the movie. This has been a passion project for The Rock for many years. In kind of seeing this happen, and it finally has. So, moment in history, moment in time, one could say. Rohit, how'd you feel about this overall? What are your thoughts overall on this
I
part?
think overall, it's not as bad as critics would make it out to be, but it's not as great or even good as say the audience members have come out to be, and that's reflective in the Rotten Tomato score being the divide. I think ultimately this movie is just okay. It's average. When both Black Adam and the JSA are not together in this in the movie, or if the movie doesn't focus on either of those two, the movie is, if I were to put a numerical score, to 6 to 6.5. Whereas when it's Black Adam and the JSA, and especially when the JSA and Black Adam are together and are conflicting and are clashing with one another, it's a 7 to 7.5. I think this movie is very much hamstrung by, if not the Rock's desire, it's whatever it is. There is a certain limitation and boundary to how far Black Adam can go.
There's a handicap at play, is what you're saying.
Yes, and I think this kind of it muddles sort of Black Adam's character in terms of what his morality is. Maybe not is really his morality; it's just more of like how he's presented, morally speaking, to the JSA, to the human characters, and by extension, the people of Kondak. And I think I'm trying to resist sort of the temptation, and Captain Logan makes this point often, is that you have to assess the movie for what it is and not for what you want it to be or what it should be. But I really think that the movie, what it is, could have been so much more had it been retooled and taken inspiration from some other movies that I'll want to get into later in this that I'll get into in depth with in the spoiler discussion. I think where the movie starts or where the movie ends, I think there is potential to develop Black Adam into a more interesting and more dynamic character. But as it stands, I think he's just fine, and a little bit and more than fine when he's clashing with other characters. But Black Adam by himself is not the most interesting or dynamic of characters. And I think this is a movie that if you waited till it came out on, like, say, DVD or more likely streaming, then you just watch it, and then I feel like this movie does not, will like stick with you outside the JSC components long after.
Yeah. So for me, I think the Black Adam movie. I think it showed. I think it showed potential, kind of like Shazam did, for example. Shazam, I think, was a big beacon of like, hey, maybe we can kind of zhuzh things up despite really being kind of like pulled down by a lot of like mistakes that we've made in the DCU. And in a sense, Shazam was like kind of like a bomb. Was kind of like repairing the damage to the DCU along with like other stuff like the Peacemaker show, for example. It's like, well, we're in the DCU essentially, but we're not letting it get us down. We're just kind of doing our thing. And it's like, yeah, those are the versions of the characters, but we're just kind of doing our stuff. And again, for me, going this movie was very much like kind of the hype wagon of see, I'm not a ride or die Shazam guy. For me, I've liked Shazam for two reasons. One, of course, for me, when I think Shazam, I'm always fighting the urge, like it's Captain Marvel, darn it. But my point is, I'm always thinking of like the Justice League episode Clash, which is always like that was my main introduction to that character, and such a cool idea to me, and kind of getting and learning a little bit more about him. I was like, oh man, that's really neat. So the idea this kid essentially turns into a Superman. It's really interesting. I always loved that episode, mainly kind of like the sorry, I keep wanting to say Captain Marvel versus Superman, but having Shazam up against Superman and kind of seeing where you can go with that, and just the idea of have those lumping Superman into the world with this character is interesting for that reason. That's why we're often talking about Superman versus Black Adam, and of course, it's very much helped by the fact we have that awesome DC Showcase short film, Superman versus Black Adam and such. So that was kind of my touchstone with those characters, and that was really the most I. That was always my first introduction, really, to Black Adam. Aside from the aesthetic of okay, who's Captain Marvel's bad guy, and you're gonna have like two examples there, Mr. Mind, who's like the little inchworm, or it's going to be Black Adam. And then, of
Well,
course,
it's three if you count Doctor.
I know, and Dr. Savannah, but I'm sorry, who'd you say?
I said Doctor Savannah.
Yeah, and Dr. Savannah, yes, you're right. Three villains. Those are always the go tos. But yes, I mean that and just that and the whole gimmick of like the kid to adult thing. That's really all I really knew and cared about with Shazam. And the movie came. I was like, okay, this kind of flushed this out. And then Jeff Johns' comic that basically is the adaptation, was the movie's adaptation of that essentially. So all that was kind of like, okay, this is a good starting point. But I'm not a super magic guy, so I don't know all the ins and outs. And just Black Adam just kind of keeps popping up in things like the Injustice Gods Among Us comics, where it's like, okay, this guy runs Kondak and all that sort of stuff. So I've always heard though, it's like, hey, Dwayne Johnson should play Black Adam. I'm always thinking, no, he should play Shazam. Look at the guy; he'd be perfect for it. And for years it was always kind of like his Deadpool-esque, the way Ryan Reynolds has always campaigned for that role and everything. This is very much his Deadpool-esque passion project. And I I didn't look. Unfortunately, I didn't look up the years of development on this to know what the exact
It's
numbers
been
were.
a,
But
I mean, Dwayne the Rock Johnson was cast as Black Adam in 2007.
that's what I thought. Okay, so here's the thing. For me, it was on the radar for me, I think, since 2008. And the reason I say 2008, so in 2007 makes it even, that's a good, thank you for knowing that. Basically, it's kind of like game plan era Rock, where you had the Rock and like the game plan where he had the hair and everything. So it's like, hey, Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam. You look at the thing, huh? And then you look like side by side back when he had the hair and everything. Oh my God, he's a dead red. Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of weird they give that guy a movie, but sure, I could see him as it's a one for one.
Well,
Okay.
I don't think it was. Was it at that time like he was? There was a movie on Black Adam, or that he was just cast for the role. And I think, at least correct me if I'm wrong, at least my understanding is like an actual movie based around Black Adam didn't start and develop until like 2014. But since 2007, he's been cast in the role as Black Adam. At least that's
Well,
how I imagine it.
Well, that's the thing. I think when it was announced, it was like, "Hey, Dwayne Johnson playing Black Adam." I think the logical assumption was, okay, he'd be in a Shazam movie, and
Yeah.
then it evolved to like, no, no, the Rock wants to be in his own movies. Like, wait, what? And of course, now it's be starting slowly but sure. It's starting to become more commonplace that we do the spin-offs of the villains. Well, now it's more prevalent, unfortunately, with the Sony side of things these days. But there's a lot of like, let's give the villains their own movies and such. But for me, in learning more about Black Adam, again, still not kind of being the expert or anything, is that the fear I had going into this movie is like, okay, The Rock's finally going to play Black Adam. That's cool. We do the Shazam movies. Like, this is cool. Shazam 2, bad guy should be Black Adam. Makes sense. Not the way we're going with that. Instead, okay, well, I guess we're still following through on that Black Adam movie. It's like that Venom movie we threatened to make for years on end. And my fear kind of in the marketing was like, oh, wow, wait a minute. I never thought of this. Is the modern Rock squeaky clean image going to sanitize and mess with the interesting character that we have before us here? I mean, my hope among hopes was that, well, post Joker, Joker the movie, I feel, you know had this plausible idea that, hey, well, we can finally do the villain movies the way I've always kind of wanted them to be, in the sense of, let's not glorify the villainy, but instead kind of be really kind of captivated and kind of like scared straight by it. One could say, like, no, this is kind of a scary portrayal of like something that could happen in real life, or like something. Again, it's like the
I mean,
someone, yeah,
yeah, it's basically the way the Joker movie approached the character Joker is like, and this is kind of to the criticism from some people regarding the movies, that it's approaching it the way Taxi Driver approaches Travis Bickle, or Henry, the portrait of a serial killer, approaches the character Henry.
yeah, exactly. So that was my biggest fear going into this movie, that we were going to sanitize him too much and we were going to lean heavier into anti-hero than we might, because to me, Black Adam fundamentally as a character, from what I know about him, I think from kind of like the more like the introductory point for a lot of people, is Black Adam is a failed hero. And even not knowing anything, even if you didn't know anything about the character, you watch the first Shazam movie, like, hey, okay, we set up there was another guy before him, ergo didn't go so well, we have a new guy in there. Pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, it's kind of the question I had with this film is like, okay, will we kind of stick to Black Adam as the failed hero story, as in he tries to be a good guy, ergo an anti-hero, and then he ends up like, nope, didn't work out, bad guy, or will it be or just be a full-on villain, from start to finish? And I don't, and with, again, maybe the inklings of, like, perhaps some, like there's like a compelling motivation there that could lead to an anti-hero in, like, a franchise, like he comes back in either Shazam or a sequel of his own movies, and he would progressively become more anti-hero like. I don't know. So it was kind of like my kind of hopes going into it that it would kind of end up like that. And I think at the end of the day, having walked out of the movie, it's kind of a passable fusion of the two. Where I think the movie overall, it's entertaining, but I think they have some BS third act moments in the climax. But I think it got. I'm here. Here's the thing. When this movie came out, I was thinking, well, I came out of entertainment. I'm hearing all this sort of discourse as you usually have with movies of like, no, it effing sucks, or like, no, it's an antichrist of a film. And of course, I'm hearing people say, no, it was awful. It wasn't Green Lantern, but it's the next worst thing. And I keep asking people, well, why? What didn't work for you? And they're saying, well, it's this, and this, but not giving me specifics, which I was hoping to kind of bring into it here. I mean, the most specifics I got were essentially, things in kind of a few things in the plotting and such, which we'll get into. But now, to me, ultimately, I think it got more aspects right than I feared it would be. The worst case scenario, that I don't think it's getting credit for. It could have. I'm walking out of it entertained, but it could have been a lot worse. And at the very least, it's fun. So that's a long-winded kind of like summation of how I felt about the movie. I liked it, but I think we're very simpatico on this, Rohit. I think we very much, in terms of what we have, it works, but it so easily could have been better because we do have elements that are working. Does that sound about right?
I think I may be more like, I think when we get into the meat of it, there might be some parts that I'll probably be a little bit more critical on than you would, or maybe,
Okay.
but maybe we'll see. We might actually agree on a lot of sort of the issues of the movie that there are,
Yeah.
and there's definitely issues in the movie.
Yeah.
Let's just get into the start of it. Do you want to go chronological order, or how do you want to go?
Well, real quick, let me shout out some comments, and then we'll approach it here. So we have Sonia Pantonja in the comments, says, "Hi guys, it's me, Sonia Priscilla Pantonja. Guys, good evening. I've never seen the Black Adam movie yet. Well, you're in for a spoilerific treat, my friend." Spooky John Kelling, our old buddy, our old haunting buddy here. Spooky John Kelling says, "They should have given him the pointy ears. I am livid."
I The pointy ears, like, I mean, they're always associated with Black Adam, but they're kind of a weird visual look. Because the thing is, if you just block off the rest of the body and just look at the face, like just the head of Black Adam, you would think that it will look like Namor, but like with, instead of his hair like slightly in the square patterns, kind of like all combed back, crew cut
It's
style.
odd how there are similarities, to a degree, between Namor and Black Adam, though.
At least, especially like Black Adam and like the more modern, like starting from like Jeff Johns' run in
Yeah,
JSC in the '90s, moving forward. But yeah, no, I think it would not, considering The Rock is in this, it would not look, it would look weird, If he
Yeah.
had hair, I think the pointy ears would work. But with him just being bald, like there's just a lot of like.
I really wish he'd get over the vanity there. Like that to me was always like the inkling of like when they first put out the concept art and everything. I was really hoping it was just concept art, but then it revealed like, man, what he couldn't. This is a passion project and everything, and he couldn't get out of his own way enough to just be. You know what? I love this character. I want to look just like him. I'm going to put on the wig. But no, I have to be The Rock. You know, it's I'm saying that's what I'm saying. There's kind of a compromise of how much of it is like The Rock's a big movie star and people have an expectation of him and certain things, and I don't know. It just
I
kind
mean,
of feels
let's be honest, Blue Dragon. If The Rock wasn't Black Adam, this movie would have been made in the first place. Like they would have just gotten some random actor to who they would have beat them up, and then had them be the antagonist to Shazam and
yeah,
like Shazam 2 or 3. So
yeah, it's a fair point. All right, so yeah, so I mean, we can jump around a little bit if you like. I mean, I figure we might tackle aspects of things. But do you want to like where would you like to start, Rohit? We'll do whatever you want to do here. So where
I
do you
guess
want to start?
chronological order maybe is a good place to start. Just
Mm.
or I don't know. It's like whatever you want.
Well, I mean, so long as we just can't go over every individual beat, but it's kind of more overall things. So I mean,
So
like an aspect you
okay. So here's sort of the one issue that I have
okay.
is that the whole like at the and it's sort of like at the way the beginning of the movie starts is kind of it's frustrating the way the movie starts because it's setting up this oh this this idea that like the little kid is Black Adam,
Yeah,
but it's obviously not. And the fact that like the movie then comes back to that moment and like subverts it, and then and then subverts even more with
I
like
don't necessarily mind that, and I'll tell you why. I'm
okay,
sorry. It sounds like you had a lot more to say on that. I didn't mean
like
to.
because the thing is, it's like we all okay. It tries to it the movie doing that. I feel like it's too clever for its own good because from the market, like if people like this movie's been so heavily marketed, like I would be very surprised for people to have not like a basic idea who Black Adam is, and with the fact that like the kid is accompanied by obviously The Rock, who is just like less muscular than his usual self, but it's like okay, that's just like unnecessary plotting, like you and like the whole idea of the kid being chosen to be the champion, have him transform, and then give the powers to the dad, and then he dies just instantaneously. It's like okay, this is just too much plotting. They could have just simply have Black on the Star be like basically whatever like the kid's ideals should have been Ted Adams' ideals. He loses his family, or like he becomes Black Adam to liberate his people. His family gets killed, and then he goes off the rails. And here's the thing that's kind of, and here's the one other thing I want to add, and I'll let you speak after this. Um, in Shazam, it is clearly said by the Wizard that Black Adam released 7 evil sins and destroyed several civilizations, and Kandok being one of them. And that's never mentioned. That's never shown in this movie.
Huh? Did wait? So you're sure he said those two things specifically? That he unleashed the sins and he destroyed Kondak.
Not I mean not destroy Kondok or just like he specifically like released the 7 sins
Okay.
out of the world and not destroy Kondok but like ruin to like hurt his nation, hurt his country, and then destroyed several ancient civilizations.
Okay. So they mentioned that he did the ones this Black Adam guy who we did not quite name the previous champion, the previous chosen guy, did a lot of bad stuff, including release the seven deadly sins.
Yes. No,
Okay.
it's made they made the Shazam movie makes it out has Black Adam be like how Black Adam's typically portrayed in the comics where it's like he's a champion for a while and he turns bad.
I'll
And
tell
one
you
of the
what.
bad things, yeah.
Let me piggyback. Let me talk about my biggest fault in the movie, and then I'm going to respond to the whole the origin stuff. Okay.
Sure.
Let's take it there. Let's approach it like that. So,
Mhm.
so for me, because your villain point kind of basically dovetails into what my biggest issue is. So again, with so many of the movies we're doing now, they're kind of like featuring kind of our bad guys. The biggest issue I have is that we keep giving villains instead of just doing the most logical thing that I've been dying to do. And this movie got very close to doing it until the end, where it's like, hey, what would be interesting if we took the villains and the heroes and we just swapped the roles? So we're following the villain side of the story, and the heroes are in the antagonistic role towards them.
The
So in a
reason,
sense, like either the heroes are technically the bad guy, or they themselves are their own bad guy. Like
the reason,
those are the ways they should approach these villain movies,
I
I
mean,
think.
the reason why they don't do what you specifically look for is because, as per the Hollywood system, you want to make movies where you want to invest in protagonists and have an antagonist that you oppose. And for higher form of art and films, like you have movies where everyone's morally ambiguous and shades of gray. And in the superhero genre, with it being a blockbuster genre, a genre that is a ROI on like huge amounts of money, there is a hesitation to go to that direction because ultimately, the if you put it to the executive will just say like, well, why can't we just have the hero be the protagonist, the villain be the antagonist? Like it's just like it's. I think what you would want would only work if both the hero and the villain of whatever particular superhero you want to do are morally ambiguous or
Mm.
he's like you would need like I can't think of any like superhero property where the super themselves are can easily be the villain and the supervillain can easily be the hero,
Mm.
right? Because like the Punisher is probably the most morally ambiguous, if not like he's outright can be portrayed as a
Well,
villain for
well,
the other.
Rohit, I mean, what I'm looking for here, honestly, I mean, I think in the simplest version, back when this movie was announced, not this movie, I'm sorry, like for my example here, I mean, the simplest version of this sort of thing I'm thinking of is like Sinister Six movie, for example. Like think of it like the guy's plotting a bank job and Spider-Man's the obstacle. Like that's essentially what I'm looking for here to
No,
a
no,
degree. Where
I get no, I get that. I wouldn't mind that me personally, Rohith Dhar, but for a Hollywood executive,
basically saying Hollywood would never be able to kind of do something ambitious like that.
yeah, the thing is, let's think about the Suicide Squad movie, the James Gunn one that I really like. They're both
Mhm.
like the villains are sort of anti-heroes, and you
Yeah,
need a very bigger threat. Like Starro's a villain.
yeah.
Like it's not you don't. I don't think we'll ever have a Suicide Squad movie where Suicide Squad versus an actual outright superhero team.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I mentioned you earlier about how I think these movies should take inspiration from other superhero films.
Mhm.
So here are the two superhero films that I feel like that Black Adam should have taken lessons from and implemented this movie. One, the first Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man. And you know
Mhm.
what lesson they should have taken from Sam Raimi Spider-Man?
What?
The first Sam Raimi Spider-Man works because you get to see the perspectives of the people in New York City and how they respond to the presence of Spider-Man being the hero of New York City.
Uh huh.
We don't really, and this is a criticism that you can have of Black Panther a little bit, but this is especially so for Black Adam. He's like we don't get really like an in like a grounded person's view. We don't really get a sense of what the people of Kondak are like.
Mm.
And I think that's especially important because that compared with
Given his roots in the whole slavery thing, you want to know
or
what
just like
your
the fact
besides.
that he's of the people. It was like, well, we don't really get a sense of the people beyond just like Adriana, her son, and the uncle. They're just kind of like the human characters that are kind of the most boring parts. But we don't see like people like average people, average Kandaki people just talking amongst themselves, like, oh, what do you think of Black Adam? Oh, I think he's good, or I think he's bad. It's not like that, back and forth because another thing that I wish this movie could have done, on top of the having the citizens' point of view of Kondak, is this movie should have really been structurally similar, if not outright the same, as Captain America: Civil War, where Black Adam is on one side, one faction, his pro Black Adam people, and then the JSA is on another side, and then Sabak, like the demon guy who is just basically this big CGI monster should have been the Baron Zemo, the guy who manipulates both sides to go against one another and help him consolidate his power and control over Kahndaq.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, for me, it just feels like, yeah, it's so weird that this movie gets so close to, because it's so frustrating, because like we do have the JSA enter, and they are fighting him. They're claiming he's a bad guy and everything. And then we have like the discourse about, well, wait a minute, he's actually done a lot of stuff that's really helped Kahndaq in like a day, when you guys, it's taken you forever to get your butts down here in the first place. And I found very interesting. It was like getting so close to what I've been hoping for. We're like, okay, we're going to open the perspectives a little bit. And the whole point about the whole like the villain thing is like, I guess the studio executives out there is like, well, it's when we do the flip, we get to be in the very unique position of, okay, we've understood the other side of it. We've seen the humanity, or like at least the motivations behind these characters, and we are we're in a perspective in which we are, even if we're not agreeing with their choices, we are kind of rooting for them in a sense, like you do with any anti-hero drama, or like any like kind of crime drama, for example. It's like, you're kind of following the bad guys, but it's the wrong thing. And then you have kind of the obstacle and things, and which kind of flips you in perspective. Like, well, now you're kind of like you're kind of in kind of an interesting, kind of morally complex space there. Now, as far as the third act, then we have kind of like our villain really pretty much comes out of nowhere, in the sense of like, hey, and forget all that interesting stuff. We just have to, the interesting moral dilemma. Then we just have to have like a big old CG fight with a guy who I completely forgot that we directly referenced this. Right? This makes it even worse. So I didn't care for Sabak and the Crown plot. I really didn't think we needed the Crown plot at all. And just the fact that none of that has anything to do with the seven deadly sins, because I always thought, yeah, we should do something with the seven deadly sins, but I forgot literally that he was the guy who unleashed them. So it's like that would have made all the sense in the world. At the very least, if we're going to do like because they kept saying a demonic threat and everything, we saw the other side of like what was being unleashed. Well, that should be the seven deadly sins, but we're not doing that.
Yeah, this movie just like feels so, and I kind of had this like kind of personal theory that like Black Adam's like it's in the DC universe, but it's not set on the same Earth. Like I thought it was like, oh,
Basically, the old Earth 2 idea, which is
yeah,
why like, we would have the JSA instead of the Justice League, and so on and so forth.
especially with the Justice Society, there have always been like, at least originally, leading up to Crisis of Infinite Earths or afterwards, initially, like they were on Earth 2 and
Mhm.
Earth 1 was the Justice League and all that stuff, and they would
Yeah.
have much controversy. I thought I feel like that was what they're going for, and with the whole fact that like the Justice Society is a thing, but they've never been referenced or mentioned in all the other DCU movies. Like the way that they're presented to be just a functioning team that have communications with the with Amanda Waller.
Mhm.
There's already one established superhero, Henry Finkler, as like the original Atom Smasher. So there were like, superheroes before Superman, presumably.
So this wasn't just fully built up. We've had the group for a while.
Yeah, at least that's how they present them. At least that's how they're presented in the movie. Like Hawkman has like a big ass mansion estate in like Louisiana, so presumably Hawkman's been Hawkmaning things up for a while.
Yeah.
If we're going by like
He has a history with Dr. Fate, so they've interacted a bunch. So
yeah, and Dr. Fate's like 100 years old. So
well, to be fair, he's always like 100 years old. So I don't know how much.
Well, like if they like, at least my interpretation, at least just based off the comics, right? Like Hawkman is in one iteration.
Yeah, he's reincarnated or he's a fan. The point being, yeah, I hear. Yeah, he's been around.
Yeah. And I just think like the way I think the whole how Black Adam's and I think the J well this I feel go all over the place, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that Black Adam as he's presented isn't really much of like an anti-hero. I know they have like the freaking Clint Eastwood spaghetti western, he's the man with no name, or in this case the Man in Black.
Now, I really did like that idea that when he's like kind of imitating that scene when he's taking on the gun, and that was pretty fun.
Here's the thing that I don't know if you noticed this or got annoyed with. The music, the needle drops were just like they just didn't fit with the scene. It was distracting. And like when they did the like their Mexican standoff and like the Ennio Morricone music, it's like okay, that's too much. Like it wasn't like Suicide Squad bad, the 2016 one, but it was kind of like okay, this is too many needle drops, too many music.
I
Like
mean, I thought the Western one was cute, given you saw it on the TV. I was like, oh, look at him.
it's too in your face. Like maybe I'm just more inclined to have to want a little bit more subtlety in regards to music, especially if we've seen other stuff like this. And it's unfair to compare to say like James Gunn's DC work, but like he knows how to drop music and utilize needle drops and music in a way that's like evocative of the tone and all that. And this is just like the music, whatever like music that is popular or things people listen to that shows on the movie. It's like okay, this doesn't really like add to the scene. Like if it's an action scene, there's music playing. It's not like a music video that's like super kinetic or whatever. It's like it's just like music playing. It's like okay, this is like just how any other movie uses like licensed music.
Right.
But
Basically, it wasn't as you're saying. We probably should have gone more in the direction of like kind of like the mythic kind of scale of score and such.
yeah, no, obviously, yeah, honestly, and I think that would have made things a little bit less like oh this is like a consumer product with The Rock, the one of the biggest movie star playing this character.
Yeah. So let me refocus to Black Adam's origin, because John Kelling laid out some really good stuff that ties into kind of the origin stuff I want to say. So let's talk about this a little bit. So I feel Black Adam's origin is very much a linchpin of this film, what they're trying to do and everything. Clearly, they opened the movie with it, and we're building the reveal. I mean, I think I like what they're doing with the reveal here. So let me okay, we'll touch on the. I'll highlight John Kelling's stuff in a second here. Just laying things out. Sorry. Basically, he's the linchpin of the film, and obviously the question of like is Black Adam, a hero or villain, and the fact that we kind of show a few variations on this, and we kind of build up like okay, so we're familiar with the story of Shazam and the idea this guy is he's kind of like the initial Shazam, so we're kind of playing with anyone who's unfamiliar with Black Adam, he might be a kid, and then reality. And I, knowing the little I knew about Black Adam, I was like, well, traditionally he's not a kid. I think the mistake in the presentation of this was okay, kid, and then we see the kid in the modern day, because that makes me confused. Like, wait a minute, is the kid supposed to be him? Was he not sealed away? That was a mistake to me?
I get what you mean because originally, yeah, it's sort of conflicting because like the way the movie starts, it makes you think the kid like when it makes you think they're trying to make a parallel between Black Adam and Billy Batson, that they're both kids that
Yeah.
yeah, and because it goes along with the purity of heart thing, but um, which is kind of like
I mean, I like it as a misdirect initially, but then we see the kid
yeah,
really is the
I
heart of
don't
what.
I don't like it as a misdirect because as soon as I saw the kid and like his father, it's like okay, the father's Black Adam. We
Yeah.
all know it's like a thought. Like it's like it was so openly emotionally manipulative, and I think it kind of hurts the movie because if we're trying to make the like Black Adam to be this morally ambiguous badass or someone who can is willing to kill like a bad guy or who he thinks is a bad guy and like that kind of can turn off some people and whereas or turn off or like rally some people to the side him having like oh like my son was a good person, he got the powers, and then when he gave the powers to me instantly just without like a moment's notice he gets hit with the random arrows
Well,
which
I have thoughts on that.
okay you what are your thoughts?
Okay, so biggest question I had going into this movie to see how far they were going to go with it is the little I know about Black Adam is that in the origin it was very implied, at least in the new 52 version. That's the Jeff Johns version, which you can kind of like correlate with the Shazam comic, the movie. So that's pretty much the most Shazam comics I really read. So the Jeff Johns stuff is like the only thing I'm really familiar with them. Anyway, regardless, um, the thing I knew about Black Adam going to this movie is like, okay, well, traditionally the idea is like there was a nephew and an uncle. He was the uncle, and then you had the nephew, and there was a power exchange, and that's how he became Black Adam. So because of that, we're seeing the kid. I'm thrown off. I'm thinking, okay, well, the kid got the seemingly the kid was given the power, so we might be going a different way with this. But then we reveal, so that's why I think deep down that's really why I like the reveal. Like, okay, no, we actually are going that way. And then the big question remains: what it was implied that the uncle, for the greater good, for like the power and free liberation and everything, he killed his nephew, and he felt bad about it. It was like morally, and that was the big question: are we going to be bold enough? I kind of knew the answer to this question. Are we going to be bold enough to have The Rock kill his own son here? Are we gonna have The Rock kill a child?
I mean, that would have been it. I mean, I would have loved if they'd done that because, well, if they'd gotten that far, then he wouldn't be morally ambiguous. But I feel like the for Black Adam to, at least for me, the most interesting version of Black Adam is basically some like, there people make comparisons to like Doctor Doom with Latveria or Namor Atlantis. I think Black Adam is really just like a dictator, like a Middle Eastern dictator on the lines of Gaddafi and Hussein, but a little bit, but maybe has like some genuine like populist support. Like he actually like helps to make the country better, but the way he goes about it is so like draconian and barbaric. Like, and the thing is, sometimes the people he kills aren't like out and out bad guys. It could be people that just like challenge his authority and maybe want a little bit more democratic or more open society. And Black Adam, in his sort of rigid ways, doesn't allow that and just like quashes opposition. Like that's for me is interesting because the thing is like at that point the JSA, whenever if they were to come into Kahndaq and Black Adams has that kind of role, that kind of stature, then JSA are kind of in a more like tighter position because. But the thing is, weird thing with the way the movie's played out, it's like Black Adam just kills like international mercenaries. He's not really much of a like anti-hero. Like the thing is that they're talking about like, oh, these guys need due process. Like, dude, these are international mercenaries. They're not like it's just like them being killed. I don't feel like the Black Adam is an anti-hero for killing inner gang soldiers, mercenaries. I feel like he's more of an anti-hero if like for someone that's maybe affiliated with inner gang, like a Kandaki like citizen, like he roughs them up or like pushes, a soldier to a breaking point. He doesn't even try to.
It's too black and white, the people that he's killing, in terms of like, yeah, there's no real gray in there in terms of, well, that guy had a family and everything. He was doing this to support them, and you just killed him without a hesitation. Like, that's not good, man. Versus like they were gonna kill children. They're bullying people. They're holding guns.
Like, Intergang's portrayed as an occupying force. The oppressor. Like that's kind of like I mean, I know there's the whole like in the superhero genre, there's a whole notion about like thou shalt not kill, you shouldn't kill, you become your enemies. But like in a specific situation where an entire nation is under the foot of an international occupying force, violence is kind of justified in that regard.
Yeah, that's the thing. So a few things to break down here, just real quick. So I don't want to lose John because I had a really good point I want to highlight because this is what I was leading to, and we'll get right back to your thing in a second. Sure. John Killing says basically John Killing had a really great solution, I think, to the movie's kind of background thing. She says it would have been interesting if Adam begged his son to give him the power to heal himself after he was wounded, and then that would give him a real reason to regret his choice that he would deem very selfish, that resulted in the death of his son. That John Kelly makes an excellent point. I think that would have been a way that you would have gotten without him directly killing his son. You would have gotten what you had in the comic, essentially, with the nephew uncle thing. And you would have still had the son be a good guy. And I don't know. I think that honestly, that is an excellent solution. I think would have really strengthened the film, personally.
Or another way of doing it is that you have both like Harut and Teth Adam be both like wanting to free the people of Kahndaq in ancient times.
Yeah,
but Harut, like when he's chosen to be the champion, all that, he's portrayed as more, if not a pacifist, or someone who like wants to do it incrementally, fight, forces at a time, but not like uproot the system altogether, and not willing to use excessive violence. Whereas, like, say, Teth Adam is more willing to do like the morally questionable things, and regardless of who gets hurt in the process. And so maybe like have the mom die, and then maybe Ted Adam puts the son to task. It's like, if you were more open to do such violence, this wouldn't happen. And then maybe his son agrees, and then gives the power to Ted Adam. And then
Right. So basically, he would have convinced him, and then he might have felt like regretful of it leading. I'm sorry, you were going on about this. What happens to the son?
and maybe the son decided to die. Maybe if anything, maybe Ted Adam and his vengeance and his desire to uproot the system and kill all the bad guys. Like maybe Harut is killed in the process. Maybe not. Yeah. But now, so that would have been interesting because you would have seen you would have some people side with Black Adam because you can't just reform your way out of a oppressive system. You have to abolish it. You have to revolution. You can't be peaceful against your oppressors. You have to be militant. And then you would have the sort of the other components well, how far does it go until you just hurt the people that are oppressed in the process? And that's kind of an interesting, dynamic to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the bigger issue I think the film's coming up against with the whole anti-hero matter is that there's a huge handicap applied to this film that is not necessarily the film's fault, but is just kind of like the grave that the DCU kind of dug for itself here, at least the hole that the DCU kind of dug for itself. Here's the fact that when we doubled down on Zack Snyder, just the whole we're just gonna kind of indiscriminately kill at times, or at the very least we're going to kill and just not question it. And then it's like when you have a movie that's all about questioning it, and again, for all intents and purposes, it's in this universe, because we're not doing an Earth 2 thing. It's like it raises a lot of questions where the main reason we can't have the Justice League in here is that, well, we have a lot of heroes on that team that did kind of kill indiscriminately, and plus we're in a space where we can't talk about the Snyder cut, which still had more indiscriminate killing.
I mean, outside of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, I mean, Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg kill people.
That's what I mean. You have but still, it's like half the team and not the Trinity.
And that's a problem. Yeah, and I think that's definitely why the JSA are in there. But also, I think part of it's considering Jeff Johns is, I think, a producer on this project, I definitely could understand the JSA being pushed, and also the JSA were the big team that had
interacted. Yeah, he did interact with he was in the comics. He was friends. I did some cursory research. He was friends with Atom Smasher, and he was on the JSA a lot. And of course, Jeff Johns loves the JSA, so those are the three factors you have at play there. Yeah. But yeah, it's just this fact of we can't have really a dialogue about it, the whole your heroes can't kill, and it kind of doesn't hold fundamentally. It doesn't hold much water in this universe when the best heroes of the bunch have kind of done that already, and we're kind of down to these guys, and then it raises all these other questions wait a minute, these guys don't kill into the beacons of this thing, how are we not then it would bring about a dialogue of other stuff wait a minute, well, Superman killed that one time, but it was a tense situation though, and the guy was going to kill everyone. You have to get into the whole Man of Steel thing, but we don't have time for that discussion here.
Yeah, no, it's but speaking of the JSA, I think they're the best part of this movie, especially when they're clashing with Black Adam. All four characters are that compose the JSA are great, with special highlights towards Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate.
He was great. He was. I think even people don't like the movie if they say he was the highlight of the film.
Yeah, he was. It was which is interesting because I couldn't imagine Pierce Brosnan just not just taking the role as a paycheck and just phoning it in, but no, he puts it his all. Or if he's phoning it in, he's phoning it much better than other older actors that would be and stuff not to name names, Harrison Ford, Bruce Willis, but that's besides the point. Aldous Hodge is Hawkman. He's he's kind of, it's funny, he's a very he's not super grizzled, he's literally a veteran superhero, but he doesn't have that grizzleness to it.
Hawkman's the brawny paper towel guy of the DC universe, he's the man's man,
Yeah. I love him just being annoyed with Atom Smasher.
Yeah, that you, me, later, we're talking.
And Atom Smasher, I liked Atom Smasher and Cyclone's dynamic. Her powers were really well done visually. The costumes were great. I do have to say, Atom Smasher's mask, and I think it's just a problem that costume designers had to face with, is that for both Atom Smasher and Mr. Knight, like their mask kind of looks similar to Deadpool's mask, more so Atom Smasher. For Mr. Knight, it's like it. I think what it is that for Atom Smasher, there's kind of like not eye holes, but something but things that are kind of like that give the Deadpool and out like comparison a little bit more weight.
Well, essentially, I can tell you exactly what the deal is here. So again, with Adam Smasher, it's that Deadpool's mask in the Deadpool movie is the eyes are animated. The
Yeah,
mask is only very, very lightly stretched. Not even really, barely the mouth part of the mask is stretched. Where Adam Smasher is, it's very much everything's moving and it looks very. There's a CG element to it, and then obviously then they have the Deadpool comparison. So there's a lot working against Adam Smasher, unfortunately. And Mr. Knight, the frustrating thing, Mr. Knight is like the marketing um, for Moon Knight has him without the glowing eyes, which makes him look like 10 times more intimidating. And clearly, at the end of the day, you don't want to make him intimidating. I don't know if that's why they added the eyes or not, like the glowing eyes, which make him look like Deadpool or not.
I like the glowing eyes. I think the eyes, the fact that they're glowing and there's like a interesting like scratch mark on the top,
Yep.
kind of make it less Deadpool like.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and also like the way Mr. Knight acts
Mm-hmm.
is less like Deadpool-y. Although like Al doesn't act like a Deadpool like ripoff or clone. I think the way like he at least how Noah Centineo delivers dialogue and the way like he just at least coming from the Max is kind of like how like Ryan Reynolds speaks through the Deadpool mask, at least if it's through ADR or whatever.
I gotta be honest. With the JSA for me, I'm not saying they were bad, but I gotta tell you, I think Adam Smasher and Cyclone they got the short end of the stick. I think they were, for all intents and purposes, I think they were wasted. I think they were just visual gimmicks that we just kind of worked in there. They got cool designs. I was hoping we were gonna flesh out Adam Smasher a little bit. The Henry Winkler thing got me really excited, and then it's like, well, he's just kind of there and he's kind of bumbling. We just have running gags like between him and Hawkman, which is cool, but it's like besides that, it's just like, man, it's like I think we kind of made him look a little more buffoonish than we should have.
My understanding is reading through the Reddit thread about the movies that like that's kind of how like, he was. I don't know if he's super bumbly, but I think when Al Rossi was damaged before he's like Atom Smasher, like he was certainly more like on the like greener side of things. So I think that's sort of where they were going for, and that was when like Jeff Johns was writing like just JSA. I think that's sort of the characterization they were like taking from like where he's like maybe I don't know if super maybe he wasn't slightly bumbling, but at least how the thread went about it, it's like he's very young and then his like youth kind of comes through in like terms of how he does his superheroing, where he's not as experienced as like the other like veteran JSA superheroes.
I mean, mind you, now again, I say that because I'd like to know more about Adam Smasher. And I only visually know the guy like in Just League the animated series with JLU. Where it's like he's just on the team. He's the guy with the really cool looking costume and the gimmick where he just grows and he has Adam in his name. That's really all I knew about the guy. So you might be right. Cyclone, though, I mean, really is just like they're dynamic together. Is all we really get there. Cyclone's like just like she may or may not. Well, she's in somewhat related to Red Tornado. It seems.
No, she's not related to Red Tornado. Like I mean, there is like a not like Robot Red Tornado, obviously, but like the original like Maxine or some other character that's like that had like a bucket on her head, and then like in like the Jeff Johns JSC run, she's like the custodian for the JSC museum, and her like grandniece or whoever is like the new like the Cyclone that's like has the tornado powers.
I'm an insomniac. Says I liked Adam, Adam Smasher and Cyclone's chemistry. Yeah, that's the thing. I like their chemistry together. It just feels like I don't think there's room for them in the movie, honestly, because we have a lot going on. That's kind of
I'll say this: the kid in the movie, he was fine, but there were certain parts where it got a little bit annoying.
you mean Amon, like the
Amon,
Adriana's
the
kid.
part that was annoying was like near the end of the movie where he does the freaking like Jay-Z diamond hand thing, and that's like, come on, come on. He's like just being like, oh man, this is like a kid actor just being a kid. And
He wasn't really shouting. He was just saying, "Hey guys, we should do this to help Black Adam."
yeah,
Ah.
it was like it was very like like just like a regular like is reminds me how, a lot of how like kids acted in like the '90s superhero movies, where they're
Yeah, no, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. That's the thing. Everyone keeps coming down the kid, and I try to like say,
also
well,
another thing I want to add. I'm so there's a lot. There's just a lot for me to just think about. Okay, so apparently DC Comics exists in the DCEU.
well, I mean, it's probably like the Captain America logic. And to be fair, Shazam had like the fandom of these
No, the
characters
Captain
already
America
at play.
logic is that the U.S. government made like propaganda comics. What's the reason? Like, what? Like, how does that? Like, explain to me how DC Comics exist in the
Um,
DCU.
John Killing said, give me 1 second here. Maybe they should have added a couple other JSA members like Rex Hourman and Mr. Terrific. Now, there's something real quick to mention here. Now, of course, Stargirl. Remind me, Rohit, do you watch the Stargirl show?
Yeah, I do. I do. I'm
Yeah,
caught up.
I love it. And that show very much, I think, going into this was interesting because, like, okay, that's kind of so far that's been the best representation to a degree we've had with the JSA, and we've kind of seen him before in Legends of Tomorrow briefly, and there was it was
In
back when Legends
Smallville.
of Tomorrow was, yep.
In Smallville.
Oh yeah, well yeah, you're right. It was like one episode. That's what I'm saying. We had one episode in Smallville, like a two-parter possibly, and then we had kind of like essentially one of the good seasons of Legends of Tomorrow, and then basically like a whole series with Stargirl.
Mm-hmm.
So the JSA's representation finally putting him on the big screen is like, yay, good for the JSA. JSA is kind of like it's a cool like old timey gimmick to kind of bring about these days. And yeah, Hourman's always been my favorite of the JSA, and I love I really like him on the show and everything. And Mr. Terrific is more like kind of like a modern JSA ad to me, but yeah, he's I don't know, Mr. Terrific feels like he's better like on an ensemble, but I never really thought about putting him with the JSA for me, but. Would have been interesting. Yeah, you're right. He'd be the tech guy of the team if they had
I
him on.
mean, clearly they picked the characters that just weren't on Stargirl, and so that's like it'll be funny. Like if Stargirl continues on, like which JSA characters they get to show and they get to have in the show versus JSA characters that they don't portray that just are like relegated to the movies of
Do
the
you
DC.
remember ever seeing the Doctor Fate helmet in like the bag of stuff in Star? Because I don't think we have.
No, no, Doctor Fate is referenced in JS in sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
Stargirl.
they referenced it, but we didn't see the helmet, right?
It might have been just something in the side, or well, because isn't Doctor Fate in like the group portrait for the JSA in that show?
That's the thing. I don't. We don't know. Seriously, we keep going to the Injustice Society versus the JSAs with the portrait. So I can't recall like what it because we barely went to the location like the last two seasons. Anyway, sorry, refocusing, folks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, I adore Aldous. I adore Aldous Hodge as an actor. I love him. I love when he shows up. And he was Green Lantern, one of the most recent the animated Green Lantern movie they did. Honestly, if I'm being frank, Aldous Hodge, I wish instead of I thought it was great as Hawkman, did a great job, but I think he would have been so much better if he played the John Stewart Green Lantern live action. He'd be perfect for it. Now that can't happen, but
Or Black Lightning.
I mean, of course, he'd be. That's the thing. Aldous Hodge is very mad. He'd be great as so many characters, to be frank. But because I loved him in One Night in Miami. He's great in the Invisible Man movie that they did in 2020. He's just I love when this guy.
I only know Aldous Hodge because of the show Leverage and the movie Hidden Figures.
Oh yeah, he isn't. Oh yeah, he's in Hidden Figures. Good in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So I just I like his dynamic with Black Adam. The fact that we were going to have him be kind of like the leader of the team and kind of like bumping up against you believe that Hawkman could take on and stand up to Black Adam, which I think he kind of represented very well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. Sorry, we kind of jumped around a lot here, folks. I'm just trying to focus where we should necessarily go here. Okay, I guess let's talk about the supporting characters for a moment here. So that's the thing. So when we released Black Adam from the crypt and everything, from his tomb and everything, we have Adriana Kareem, who Kareem was fun, by the way. I think he was a fun side character. So
No, he's great. If he's on the actor who plays him, Mohammed Amer or Mo Amer, he's a Palestinian comedian, and also he's been an actor in one of my favorite shows in the past 5 years, Rami. It's on Hulu. It's the third season came out just a few weeks ago, and he's like he's part of this, the cast, the supporting cast in that show, and also he's made his own Netflix show called Mo that's on Netflix. It's like 8 episodes.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So it occurs to me that apparently, that Adriana and Amon, the mother and the kid, they were, in the comics. Eventually, Black Adam, he kind of, he marries. They're supposed to be bigger characters in the comics, and they kind of in the New 52. At some point in the comics, they were simplified to be characters kind of like this, like in the Jeff Johns, kind of like let's ground them a little bit, kind of way. You had
Oh no,
ISIS.
I specifically know about like Amon and Adriana because they were introduced in the 52, the 52, not like New 52, but like the like literal 52
Yeah,
series. After Infinite Crisis.
yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, I think Adriana was like if not a rebel, just like someone that was like a skeptic or something like that. And she was brought in, and Amon is not her son.
Well, I know. Yeah, he was just basically he kind of became a surrogate son in the comic, but
Because Amon is specifically Adriana's like brother.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah. And
Huh.
Adriana and Amon are brought in to Black Adam, and they've then essentially become like how like Captain
Like
Marvel.
the Marvel family,
Yeah,
the Shazam
yeah,
family. That's like the
and
Black Marvel family.
yeah. And I think Oman is becomes Tomaz or something like that.
Yeah. Tomas is and that's the thing. So Adriana, so Isis is Zari from Legends of Tomorrow. At least it's kind of interesting. They definitely wanted to change that up. It seems like we don't want to just do another the Legends character again, and or deal with all that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's interesting. I think there's a disadvantage here in terms of I think it'd be interesting to go that route with them, and I think we're at the disadvantage of we don't have they don't have the luxury that Shazam ultimately took, and like, hey, we can do the full kind of Marvel, like the whole Shazam family at the end of that movie. And here it's like I think for the people aren't crazy about the side characters, like, well, we can't necessarily go really bold with them, but because we don't really I don't know, we kind of have to introduce him here. We don't want to just rip off Shazam. It feels like, and I don't know if we're quite there with him in terms of connection to do that sort of thing. I don't know. So I think that's kind of what people maybe might be souring some people on him. But then again, people might not know about the whole. Like, they actually he kind of becomes like a junior kind of Black Adam. Who knows? But
I mean, they might still know that, not just like
that's fair. Yeah.
So
I mean, for me, again, something just to dovetail back into the origin stuff is that I I do like in what we do have presented to us here. Bear in mind what we do have presented with the whole like father son angle, which again is still kind of a little closer bond than we have with the uncle nephew thing. Is that I I like that we have what we learn about Black Adam. He's an ex slave who lost his son, and he kind of blamed his own weakness for it. And he's it's the idea. I think on some level he feels he besmirched his son's heroic legacy by the moment he got this power. It was revenge and murder, and obviously he was sealed away and everything. It's probably given him some time to stew. And I think that's an interesting potential, like for the building towards the future. I think that's an interesting contrast for him and Shazam with the family angle. The idea that this guy had lost his family, and it was a father. He was kind of the father taken, who had his son taken away from, and the idea that Billy
yeah.
kind of like was separated. And
But it kind of goes against like the whole idea of Black Adam being like a fallen hero in the first place.
I know, which
Because
is
like
so
he gets the
frustrating.
powers and then just immediately goes to like smoke the king at the time, and it's like, okay, you didn't have an opportunity to like be. It would have been interesting if maybe like the wizard, maybe his family gets killed, and the wizard makes a deal where like, oh, if you become my champion, you can maybe you can see your family again or something like that. And maybe the wizard's like, or something where it's like Black Adam's given an opportunity, or Chet Adams given an opportunity to do some good, and then maybe after a while, like the primal instincts that he kept at bay just came out, or he just felt that being a goody two shoe hero as the wizard wanted just wasn't enough,
Hmm.
or something like that. But the fact that like if like I think that's sort of the handicap. Is like this movie just made. All right, there's the good guy Black Adam essentially, and then the went all wrong and just decided to like bring hell on earth Black Adam, and they're just kind of just like segregated into two characters. Like Dwayne Johnson doesn't play the fallen hero; he just plays a guy who's just like keeps his head down, getting powers, tries to get revenge on his king, then gets entombed, wakes up, and then just kind of like just kills random criminals or mercenaries, and is kind of just forced or pushed to become a hero.
Hmm. So, with that, I mean, something we should highlight is I think one of the MVP elements of the movie is I don't think anyone's really I don't know how you feel, but I don't know how I think some people I've heard. I guess I've heard like response from both sides of this. I mean, I think the Rock I think the Rock playing Black Adam very straight. Uh, Leading to some comedy and just kind of playing to kind of old like kind of a hint of pathos here and there, like the idea he's kind of looking out for this kid because he sees perhaps his son in him to a degree. I just like the idea of the whole catchphrase gag, like tell him the man in black sent you. But it's the fact just playing it very kind of, I don't know if fish out of water is the right term. Maybe it is just the whole thing of
It's
like
kind of like he's kind of playing like a bit of a Drax angle.
yeah, it's a very literal sort of thing in which the idea of it's like you need to say a catchphrase before you kill them. But it's the idea we have this character who's very committed and just very set in how he does things, in which like is the idea there's an ego there. There's a self confidence like that no one can beat me. I am essentially he's in a position of absolutely being like a dictator in terms of like he's so in that respect, I think he's channeling the character, and you get the sense of the passion project versus a job aspect, which is what I want with the movies. I don't want The Rock just playing it like, well, I said for years I wanted to do Black Adam, so now I finally got to do it. I wanted to be like,
I mean,
yeah, I want to
I
be Black Adam, and this is kind of Black Adam-y stuff that we would have, in which he would, be like, I'm going to kill people, no one can stop me. So,
I just feel like it's kind of like, oh, this is like one of the few characters who's non-white that is kind of badass or something like that, and then Dwayne Johnson just latch onto that, and it's like, oh, this reminds me of my old wrestling days, and whatever comics he maybe glance at, like, I mean, I don't deny that Dwayne the Rock Johnson isn't passionate about this project, but I just don't think his understanding of the character, at least how the movie plays out, is like more than surface level, or if it is, or if it does know a lot of the character, it his understanding of the character is not reflected, and I think a lot of that's because Dwayne Johnson as a celebrity, as like the biggest movie star, like outside of Tom Cruise, is like putting boundaries on the potential of this character to really kind of challenge audiences and people in the movie, because it's still a Dwayne Johnson movie. Like I feel like it go like the violence is there, but I think the
do you
way
want me to teach him violence?
yeah, no, I wish there was just a little bit more of where Black Adam says or does things that like is that is divisive. Like he has to be a polarizing figure, and I don't think the Rock played him like that.
Hmm.
Like he played him just slightly more like if not more heroic, it's just less ruthless.
Right. Should have played him like a little more intimidating. Intimidating in terms of less for like, oh, we're rooting for this guy. More intimidating in terms of like, oh god, this he's saving people, but he's so terrifying when he does it. Like, what? It's kind of like imagine this. So the thing we have in this movie now that we did not have had this movie made like like years ago, like when it was like always advertised to be. You haven't. We live in a day and age now. We have stuff like Invincible and The Boys, which kind of recontextualizes how we look at heroes in a lot of interesting ways. And there's like an element of Homelander at play potentially with Black Adam. Only obviously that one's played more. I'm saying there's like
So I don't think it's Homelander. I think like I mean Black Adam's kind of just more like Doom or Namor or just really any like ruler of like a far off country that's very set in his ways.
well, I mean, it's like a guy who doesn't get it is kind of what you have with Homelanders. I should be the good guy here, and,
Or
and
or 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 at least in later seasons he gets it and doesn't care.
Exactly. So there's some that's probably the better way of looking at it. But you're right, though. I think ultimately we do with this movie. I think ultimately we come down more on the Doctor Doom side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, so with that, with the sorry, that's the thing. Ultimately, yeah, we do have kind of like the the Doctor Doom kind of like dictator angle to a degree here. And what I'm getting at with that point, sorry, is that I think a very pivotal thing for me in this movie was the end of his story, the throne moment, which obviously the most probably the most famous Black Adam image is him sitting on that the Kahndaq throne, right?
Yeah.
And now remind me, Rohit, I need you to remind me something here. This is important. Did he for a moment sit in the throne, or did he instantly destroy it?
No, that image is from like a minor event, like
No, no, I
near.
mean in the movie, Rohit. Did he do that in the movie?
He sat the throne and then destroyed it like
Okay,
after a few seconds.
that's what I wanted to verify. Okay, so here's the thing. The Thromo was big. You know, it's funny. They've made Funkos of this Thromo, and given the fact it only sits there for like 3 seconds. But here's the thing. For me, ultimately, movie, I'm glad we kind of we addressed the moral ambiguity with like the stuff with the JSA earlier. The fact of like the whole like, well, wait a minute, now you guys are coming in. Look at the damage you've done, just kind of flying in blindly fighting this guy instead of talking it out and everything. And obviously, the ladies playing peacemaker and up, kind of the peace talks and everything. Is that it basically it kind of gave me enough of like, okay, well, he's not, it seems like he's not just an anti-hero, which and the throne thing seems to be kind of him making a declarative statement. But I think I wonder what your perspective is on this, and that I kind of think he needed just to sit on the throne instead of destroy it. But I kind of get why he destroyed it, because I think that jived with his character. But I think I was hoping for a fact of like this would be kind of almost like a Luke Cage season 2 thing, where it's like the temptation of, okay, he's viewing himself perhaps as an anti-hero on the rise of becoming like a leader to his people and everything, but there is that temptation if he's sitting in the throne, and that could very easily just make him like he's going in the direction of being a bad guy before perhaps he's set straight down the line or something
I,
like that.
I kind of wish he just sat on the throne and accepted being the ruler, and maybe
Uh-huh.
the second movie he like learns that he can be a ruler, and that kind of has to be like a democracy or more fair society, and but still wants to be its protector.
Yeah.
But the fact that he just like nope, it's like okay, this feels like very much like a rewrite that like the if not by the Rock, suggested by the Rock himself, maybe just people making the movie. It's like, oh, like we can't just have him like this anti-hero be like the
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, so doesn't it feel like to you that it would have been the more interesting route if he just sat in the throne? Like, it would have been more dramatically
yeah.
interesting for like
No,
what we're
I
saying
agree.
about the
I
ambiguity
oh
of this
totally
character.
100% agree.
Yeah. I want to make sure, 'cause that's kind of the vibe I got in the movie. Is like, oh, well, it's he wants to be the protector, but still, it's like, where's the drama? Where's the intrigue? It's just like, and I'm gonna be basically conduct Superman essentially,
Yeah,
but with murder, but more than just the one murder's murder.
yeah. I feel bad for anyone that tries to like rule or be the leader of conduct because like okay, you got this guy who isn't the leader, who isn't basically the ruler, but is basically the ruler. Because like, what are you gonna do if you say no to Black Adam?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to really, Billy. Me, if you have anything you want to get in there, just let me know. I'm just gonna kind of seeking through some of the stuff we haven't gotten to yet.
There's like stuff from John Kelling near the
Yeah,
one.
sure. Like, tell the shout out, and then Jacob will pull it up. Just what you got. What would you like to?
Oh, probably like the comment at 11:08 p.m. That's like this movie reeks of heavy rewrites.
Over the past decade and a half that it's been in the works. Yeah, like all this
Yeah,
time, a lot of rewrites, perhaps like about the Rock's career. Like, hey, good guys, let's shave out some of that complexity.
oh, I love the comment at 11:10 about the hierarchy power sure changed. It just got another super. Oh man, maybe that's just like a long term hope or a promise from The Rock. Maybe it's not something that will be accomplished in one movie, but it is hilarious when you think about it. It's not really the hierarchy power exchange. It's got,
Okay, I know. Here's something I want to ask you. So another thought I had during the movie, and I don't know if anyone else might have shared this, and again, I could have just been me because I understand you want a little bit more. People would probably want a little bit more out of it, but I think dramatically for the story, just for me, it was like okay, we had our interesting stuff with the JSA, and then we had a really interesting moment. We had a really great scene between I feel Black Adam and Hawkman at the end of it all. Here, after we kind of learned more about his backstory and everything, we just kind of like had that moment of like no one can stop me. The only one that can stop you is yourself. And basically, he surrenders and gets kind of like put into like kind of a containment pod at Task Force X. I mean, probably should have been Argus, or like like Checkmate or something. But Task Force X, just in terms of like what the call is, we're calling it Task. That's what the Suicide Squad's called.
And we see Jennifer Holland's character.
Yeah,
What's her name? What's her character?
Amelia Hardcourt from
So,
Suicide. Yeah,
and she kind of just acts like just how she was in the original Suicide Squad. It doesn't. It just seems like okay, like at the end of Peacemaker, Amanda Waller's daughter outs Amanda Waller to the public,
yeah.
like through the press, and it's like okay, if we're assuming Black Adam takes place after
But
Peacemaker,
we have no idea when
I
if
know
it's what the deal is there. So that's a whole.
this continuity is just it's God. I
Well, that
get.
one's a lot simpler. That could just be before.
I mean,
That
which
could
which
be
is, which
before
is
Peace.
easier to make sense of, the continuity of the DCU Blue Dragon or the X Men film continuity?
I mean, sadly, at this point, the X Men films are seeming more lot. It's not great, but it's not good either way. Anyway, what was it? All right. So here's the thing. I mean, a part of me feel in the theater, I was thinking, honestly, I kind of think it would have been interesting if I kind of wanted it to end with him in the prison, and the post credit scene would have been him kind of like being broken out, or like some basically being released or something at the end. Like it kind of feels like him kind of on his own terms, like making the choice there. And just, but I don't know that would have. I might have found that interesting had we ended there. It would have been a shorter movie too. I think runtime wise, it might have reflected well.
Or maybe retool things where Black Adam like saves the day, but maybe realizes that he isn't
Yeah,
deserving of the power, and then decides to turn back. And then that would have seeded things where maybe like someone is looking at it, maybe Superman, whoever is like, "Hey, Black Adam, I think can be changed or whoever." And
yeah.
then this could be and then maybe based upon the reception of the movie, and based upon whatever other movies could do or other projects, like Dwayne Johnson can show back up, but not necessarily for like a Black Adam sequel. He could just be like a recurring character in the DCU.
Yeah. I don't know. It just to me felt like it would have been to me it would have been a refreshingly ambitious choice in which okay we said what we needed to say with the character and again like it's sort of like the whole what do you want to see? Do you want to see guys punch each other all the live long day? Or do you want to see a guy make a choice after all the punching? And I think that's kind of
Yeah,
what we had there for a moment. That
I
they did.
I
Yeah.
will say in regards to the action of this movie, it was pretty well done for the
Yeah.
most
No, it was. Yeah.
part. I will say this was something that Mohammed Diab, the director of Moon Knight, pointed this out, and I agree with this point, is that how Kundak is portrayed, it's portrayed in the most stereotypical way that Hollywood portrays a lot of the Middle East, with the sepia tone and just like the way, the locales and things are shot. And I think I feel like hopefully whenever we revisit Kondak, it can be portrayed. I mean, Kondak's a fictional country, but it is very much based off of Egypt. And I would
Yeah.
hope that, like, eventually down the line, once Kondak is more explored in a Black Adam sequel, it's given a little bit more personality that's not like stereotypical of how like a Middle Eastern country is portrayed in Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm, sorry. Yeah, John Collins says it should have been Cadmus. Yeah, Cadmus would have been another really solid name to go with there. I mean, with the action for me, the Sabak fight, a lot of people kind of speculate this in the trailer. I mean, when you really think about it, it's like, yeah, it wouldn't have made any sense if it were what people were speculating. Of course, Sabak kind of ultimately feels like Diet Coke Trigon.
I mean, there's really not much. There's really not much you can innovate in a demon design.
I know it just feels like again. Ultimately, this is what we kind of talked about earlier. Where again, obviously, if without Raven there, you don't really need Trigon. So obviously, it wouldn't have been. It would have been really weird just to throw Trigon out there. But in terms of is the
Visual
what?
design, like
Yeah, in terms of go on.
he just looks like Trigon without the white hair and the multiple eyes.
And really smaller and unimpressive. But yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the thing though. It's less that. It's less, I'm not saying like Trigon needed to be in this movie. No, what I'm saying is it feels like we just one. I think it's BS the fact that like hey we have our kind of our infiltrated bad guy the Ishmael I think his name is this guy. Being like a descendant of the king from the opening is far too easy and far too convenient. And two, it's the fact that we have right on the table, like this really should have been connected to the seven deadly sins thing that we had, kind of established, but we've already done it with Shazam, so we can't do it again, oddly enough. And that's the thing. I just feel like we just keep doing this thing where we keep going big with the stakes, and it honestly just feels like
Also,
ultimately we
also, Eternium is established as basically Black Adam's kryptonite, but weirdly, like
barely hurts them.
yeah, and Black Adam just shoots lightning on him on his body, and it's like he's just back to normal. It's like okay, so it's not really like kryptonite. That's kind of it's like debilitating, and it's weird that like none of the bad guys nor Intergang use Eternium against Black Adam.
Well, to be fair, Eternium is kind of a rare substance, but no, your point's good though. Yeah, that it's
Like if you set up something that could like harm or really
and
knock them
he can just like he doesn't do a hospital or anything. He just like zaps it off. Like, no, I'm good now.
yeah, it's like okay, like you could have used that as like I mean it would have been gimmicky and cliched, but having something that could put the relatively human bad guys on equal footing with Black Adam would have made things interesting because then Black Adam couldn't just like punch his way through. Like we'd have to be a little bit smarter about it,
Yeah.
or even have like this movie could have been really interesting. Like I said, the villain hero thing. It would have been interesting if like in the movie starts out with Black Adam already ruling Kahndaq and maybe having establishment like flashbacks, and then the JSA come in to like depose him or whatever, and then they use like Eternium to like have a fighting chance.
Yeah. John Kelly makes the point that, well, it's magic. Magic in general, can hurt him much like a kryptonite is debilitating Superman, but magic is just something that can generally hurt him, but not like, like something that's like, oh, God, it's zapping all the strength and could kill him.
See, then Doctor Fate should have like be able to like
Yeah,
take
exactly. By that logic, Dr. Fate.
yeah, like he's an agent of the Lords of Water, which I don't know if like depending upon where they are in the like DC cosmology, but I feel like they could, there's on the level of like the Egyptian gods that Black Adam's taking his powers from.
I mean, Dr. Fate, look at his symbol. It's an Egyptian symbol that he wears, the little, well,
The
the symbol that he creates, the whole, like, the little,
no, no,
I
no,
forget what he calls
like he has the Ankh, but like he's an agent of like the Lords of Water, which are all like these cosmic entities that are not tied to any specific religion or like real world mythology. But no, I will. It's interesting that they killed off Doctor Fate in this movie,
it
and
was sad to see him die, especially because he was, like, the best part of the movie.
I mean, I would bet you that if there was a like a Doctor Fate movie where they have like Khalid Nassour, his like grand nephew or his
Hmm.
just nephew, like take on the mantle, like he'll show up like not just in flashbacks, but like as like a ghost or like a spirit in the helmet.
Hmm.
And maybe then in the Doctor Fate movie, like Ken Nelson goes into like the afterlife with his wife Inza.
Right.
Yeah.
I, what's really cool about Doctor Fate's death, though, is the fact that we kind of literalized the name Doctor Fate, and that he could kind of, like, admittedly, yes, if you compare it to Doctor Strange, obviously Doctor Strange, he did it less, but more pivotally in Endgame. But well, between Infinity War and Endgame, the whole predictive outcomes thing. But Doctor Fate, though, I mean, it kind of fits the identity more. This guy is like constantly like seeing the fate of the universe and stuff, and like kind
And
of having seeing that.
and he's British in the movie, whereas in the comics he's just like a regular American. So it's kind
Well,
of
I
a
mean, to be was he, you sure about that?
yeah. Ken Nelson's is like I'm pretty sure Ken
I've
Nelson.
seen a few versions of Kent Nelson, but sometimes the nationality, like for example, like in Young Justice American, um, Here's English. I think in he was something in Justice League Unlimited, but I don't know if that was English or not. I don't.
No, I think okay. Well, the original Doctor Fate Ken Nelson, at least according to Wikipedia, he's Swedish American, but he's
Okay.
an American. No, in Justice League Unlimited, he's voiced by Oded Fair, so he's kind of portrayed as like this more ethnically ambiguous or
Yeah.
more Middle Eastern Arabic kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But no, in the comics, he's just traditionally like a an American
Okay.
national. So
All right.
I think it's just Pierce Brosnan was just like play. What's funny is that like I don't know if you heard this, but I think when trailers show like the Justice Society with their estate, Hawkman estate, all it was very like X-Men-y. Like
Yeah.
Pierce was kind of like the dark like Charles Xavier or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Of course, it's so odd that DC has a couple of versions of the X-Men with Doom Patrol.
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's see. So,
I like the in the jet that Hawkman symbol is on like the chairs and
I know, me too. I
and
love the
that's made of
Hawkman
nth
symbol being
metal.
there.
It's made of nth metal, so presumably it could be either he's reincarnated or Thanagarian, or in the most recent iteration of Hawkman is that fun fact, he's both in the
I
sense
know.
that
I like the version that's both person. I think he should always be kind of Thanagarian, but I like the idea if they die, they'll just come back. That's my
like he's
preference.
reincarnated across like time and space. Like in one of his one of his lives, he's like a Kryptonian, which is like, oh man, like this
Oh,
dude's yeah, it's I'll tell you more. But we're getting off track from the movie,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah. But no, the way the action's done is done well. And I think let's just talk about the. You want to talk about the post credit scene, or just maybe
Yeah,
just
we should talk about the. I think we kind of run the gamut of it. I think the movie is really uncomplicated in terms of what happens. So I mean,
yeah,
basically, it's the whole like we kind of talked through the origin aspect, the kind of the challenge. The movie fundamentally is about kind of like the kind of the ethical thing with
yeah,
Black Adam, which we've kind of been talking through. So let's and obviously there's a big fighty fight with our demon guy at the end. Our post credit scene is the thing I think people really want to talk about. So Superman returns, and we see his face this time.
yeah. And he's like, is the costume he's wearing like a new costume or just a different coloring?
I haven't seen. I've only seen the movie once, so I mean, if I
I think it's
recall, it was the same. It was like the Justice League suit.
yeah, yeah. And he has like the S curl, I think.
I did not see an S curl. I
Or like
don't
maybe not
believe
S
he
curl.
did.
His hair's like styled differently than how it is in like the other movies.
I was kind of more in shock than I was like, oh, he's got. I wasn't really able to scrutinize to see.
I wish that scene. I wish that wasn't spoiled to me just by like freaking the Hollywood Reporter or whatever. Just like, oh, Henry Cavill's back in Black Adam, and he's gonna be in a Man of Steel 2. I was like, okay, that's
Is that
cool.
Man of Steel 2 thing confirmed? Are they actually bringing him back for a movie, or
There's like there's like talks of developing a Man of Steel 2. But which I think with where DC is, that could go anywhere. But the fact that like we see Henry Cavill's face. We
Mhm.
haven't seen him in a theatrically released DC movie since 2017.
Yeah.
And so for all that this movie's done, good or bad, I have to give The Rock freaking credit for bringing Henry Cavill back into the DC franchise as Superman.
No, yeah, absolutely, you do because again, it's like Cavill's wanted. It sounds like Cavill's wanted to come back, and just everyone's been kind of like buffering
And it,
him,
and,
like
it, and it seems like it was really, I mean, let's not get into. I don't want to get into too much of the studio
right,
politics.
right.
Walter Hamada or just like people running a DC.
It's
Warner Brothers.
above our pay grade.
Yeah, but no, it's. I'm glad. Hopefully Henry gets to do more.
Yeah.
I know, like, there's this whole thing about like, oh, Black Adam Superman fights. Like, man, like, I feel like there has to be more to the character. There's more to that than just the fight.
I
It'd
mean,
be
honestly, don't you feel like this scene, just given the fact that we've seen how he's interacted with the JSA, doesn't it feel like the kind of like the scene that we don't see after this scene should be Black Adam kind of respects Superman because he's on his level and they just talk and they kind of come to an understanding or some such stuff, you know?
right. I see that come. I see. You can see that. I'd be very curious when and if like Black Adam interacts with Shazam family. Like, did they like and try to make sense of like how Shazam portrays Black Adam with how Black Adam portrays Black Adam? Just try to make those two things fit.
Yeah.
Um, it'd be interesting to see like a fight or like a movie between the Shazam family and the Black Adam family.
Imagine if Superman played like the mediator in that movie. Imagine how fun that would be.
That would be cool. Or maybe
Yeah.
like I wonder because in the comics right now, like Black Adam's a member of the Justice League. I
Mhm.
wonder if maybe instead of Black Adam being put as a member of the Justice Society, he's maybe pushed to be a member of the Justice League, whatever the Justice League looks like.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, it's and of course, obviously, the handicap that we kind of have here, and again, it's this bizarre position that we're in because now you have Superman, which is like a lifelong. Oh, finally, Superman and Black Adam, just like the short. Don't they may or may not fight. Who knows what happens? Regardless, if they don't fight, because Superman does have a line that is tantamount to kind of calling out BVS, saying, "I haven't had much trouble with somebody since a while. It's been a while since I've had trouble with someone like this,
Is there
or I've
else
heard
in the
someone
world
like not.
has
Yeah, what do
someone
you got?
that they? It's been no. It's the line is like it's been a while since the world has someone that like made them nervous.
Right. Okay. There you go. Right. So again, I guess my instinct was I kind of read that as him like, referencing the whole Batman debacle, but I don't know if that's necessarily. It's probably him referring to himself, like he's seeing himself in Black Adam, right?
Yeah. Although it's weird that Amanda Waller's like, oh, like don't leave Kondak, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like, so are we good just to have a movie that's just solely in Kondak, and then you'll
Well,
have like,
clearly he's not going to listen to her, man. He's going to,
I mean,
you
so
know,
then like, what is Superman just gonna try to fight him? Like,
uh,
is like what is Black Adam gonna go to like a random? See, that's the I just don't see Black Adam even being interested in going to other countries, and like I feel like he's very parochial. Like he's very focused on making sure his people are safe and free, and how other countries run. It's like maybe it's like a thing where like a country or whoever wants to invade Kondak, and maybe that's where he's in, protects them and all that stuff. But
it, admittedly, it does feel like it should have been Waller, like perhaps, and obviously there'd be no time to do some post credit scene. It should have been Waller, like sending people to basically she would have kind of capitalized on the threat, kind of like a Superman thing here of like, hey, this guy could be a lot of trouble for us. We should
invade
take him out. But
and
and obviously that conflicts with things we have in the movie with the
yeah,
whole he
invade,
escaped.
yeah, invade Kondak, depose Black Adam, and put in impose a puppet state government.
Yeah, so it's a question of how like how political the sequel probably that's the only really kind of the only path you have left. The political thing is going to try and oust him, and perhaps Superman is sympathetic towards his plight.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the only story direction we really have left, given the fact that Waller's like, nah, I don't need you back in captivity. I can take you
Although
out anytime I
apparently
want.
Superman is like working with the Amanda Waller, or is
Well,
in.
remember, it's interesting if you think about it. Mind you, this was the not so great Suicide Squad, but in that Suicide Squad movie, Amanda Waller seemed to really like Superman.
Does he really like Superman? Does she really like Superman, or just like
I think
admires
the
his power? And I
well,
really,
no, go on, sorry.
like. I feel like she would admire Superman's power, but and maybe not care for like how he limits himself and just being a
Well, no,
good
you're
guy.
right. I'm not saying she's palsy with him. What I mean is that she likes Superman in terms of like she was mourning him with everyone else, saying we the next Superman in terms of like maybe the next Superman won't be as friendly. So perhaps to that degree, it's like I can trust Superman. I can he's he's on my he's on our side. He was actually I don't think there was any degree of like what the popular. I think Amanda Waller was smart enough to see it wasn't a popular thing. This I know bad people because I run the Suicide Squad. This guy, he was not a bad person. He was absolutely on our side, and like idiots, we got rid of them. I don't know. That could be a stretch. I could be wrong about
I
that.
don't
I'm
know.
just saying.
It feels sort of weirdly like they're taking the component from the Dark Knight Returns, where like Superman was a stooge for like the American government, and having that be the case, sort
Mm,
of,
yeah.
with Amanda Waller being the face of the U.S. government. I don't know. It's
So basically, she's Reagan.
yeah, but what's what is interesting is like God, will Black Adam really interact with much of the DCEU besides Superman, the JSA, like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, or God, I don't, and I mean, there's doubts whether he'll interact with the Shazam family, but I would hope they would do that. I'm just sort of unclear about what's the long term plan for Black Adam. Like, is Black Adam going to just be like one of the heroes that's maybe on the fringes, and maybe he like sacrifices himself for like the big? end game level or Secret Wars level event for the DCU, or like what's like the overall like long term plan for this character?
Well, the way I see it, it goes one of, I believe, roughly one of two options in terms of what the end game is of this guy. And mind you, of course, DC is kind of like their plans are in shambles these days, so I wouldn't bet on anything. We don't know. We don't have all the variables, folks, to really officially call this sort of thing. But it feels like simplest way we go in terms of playing things out. We gotta have him cross over with Shazam. So that's the main thing,
Yeah,
and probably at least get one more Black Adam movie out of him. Most likely a trilogy in Shazam. Either that or three appearances, which would be a follow up, which might be a Superman Black Adam thing, or the bare minimum, just like he shows up again and he has this big Shazam crossover.
yeah.
What order that happens in, I don't know. I'm saying bare minimum. That's Plan A.
Uh-huh.
Plan B, in terms of like, okay, we want to keep this guy around for a long time. We want to do stuff with him. That would probably be an event like. It's a question of how bold they want to go. I mean, given the multiverse is, I mean, it's let's just say it's kind of on the table right now because it was on the table, and then chaos happened with a guy with a kid in a red suit. So who knows? But we could potentially be going like an injustice route with things. But then again, I would not specifically want that because we just got out of doing a Dark Superman. I don't want to do that again. But that's in terms of like an event that would incorporate Black Adam. That's where my mind goes to the Injustice franchise. So,
Or maybe like if Black Adam was a villain from the start,
mhm.
he was still a villain, like maybe have him be part of the Justice League or the Secret Society supervillain, something like that.
Yeah,
Or maybe hit like if ever Green Lantern um is a thing, like have like him like Black Adam and Sinestro have like this very interesting friendship.
they do.
Yeah, and so it'd be cool to have them, interact in a movie. Maybe bring in Ra's al Ghul into the mix, just to sort of have like the Middle Eastern flavor into it.
That's the thing. Raish would be friends with Black Adam. I can buy that.
Hmm.
Imagine how interesting this would be. Imagine what if that was like your Batman Superman dynamic, Ra's al Ghul and Black Adam. What if you respected the heck out of Ra's al Ghul?
Yeah, yeah, you could have basically like an Injustice League and
Mhm.
have like
The
maybe
most compelling Injustice League you've ever seen. Like I love these
Black
guys
Adam
together.
be like the Superman counterpart, have Ra's al Ghul be the Batman counterpart.
You have your failed, essentially your failed and or morally ambiguous heroes all together on a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be interesting.
Hmm.
All right. Let's see. Oh yes, okay. Jacob in the comments here, he says hopefully it would be better than the animated Injustice. Yes, hopefully it would be better than that movie. God.
Yeah.
So it's been 45 days since Ezra Miller last terrorized the public. Yeah, it seems to be on the quiet side, which is good. I have no idea what that means for that Flash movie they're doing. We'll see. I'm still banking on not coming out, but we'll see.
No, that's gonna come out. There's too much money invested in that movie.
I mean, then again, it's like they have like completed movies that would have a lot of money invested in them
Okay,
too.
Batgirl is like a $90 million movie that
Hmm.
was only cancelable because there's a loophole in the tax code that enables them to cancel it and have it be a tax write-off because of it, being post-merger. So, whereas Flash has been developing long before the merger.
Yeah.
So, and it's $200 million budget at least, or
I mean, obviously we can't really get into this now, but obviously there's the question of a lot of people are throwing out recast, like doing like the Christopher Plummer thing on him, but I don't. By Christopher Plummer thing, I mean like basically like recasting an actor to reshoot all of his specific scenes, but with the title character of the movie, it's unclear.
yeah.
I think what happened is I think Warner's like got him some really good lawyers to do like a lot of PR work, so they're gonna try and release it as is, and they're just gonna like try to boost him. Like that's a thing of the past. Ezra Miller, he's a good kid. Look at him.
Or
He's
they'll
holding a
just
box
release
of
the movie
kittens.
and then Ezra Miller will just be quietly recasted, and then whenever the Flash shows up, whether it's a sequel or a Justice League movie, it'll be a
Yeah.
different actor.
I think the funniest thing is when you see the Shazam 2 trailer and they have like he's referencing the Flash and they're not showing his face.
And they show Ben Affleck Batman, and it's like, oh, but like Ben Affleck is. I mean, we really don't. Do we really have
Well,
much of
no, yeah, he's supposed to be in the Flash movie.
Ben Affleck? I thought no, Ben Affleck's Batman is in the Aquaman movie.
Well, that I thought it was both, honestly, because they said, well, again, we're getting off
Oh,
track.
yeah, he's right. He's right. He's in both Flash and Aquaman, but Michael Keaton's the Flash, which was under the assumption that Michael Keaton would be the new Batman movie for it. But now Batgirl's out, so maybe Ben Affleck. God,
See, nowadays you need a flow chart. And guys, I'm a guy who can keep up with continuity on things. This is saying something. It's like, well, might have this, and obviously we're dealing with hype. The problem is DC, Marvel. We have mostly certainties. DC, it's all hypotheticals because everything's shifting around constantly.
Yeah.
So who knows? And Jacob brings up the point of like it could be Wally West. Well, that's the thing. If they wanted to, honestly, they wanted to avoid a recasting. It's like, yeah, we introduce Wally West, we make him the Flash, and then perhaps we do the thing where. Or, well, yeah, sure, or Jay Garrett. Let me ask you this, though, real quick, and then we'll probably wrap things up here, or at least begin to wrap things up. Do you think the Flash movie, quite possibly, just their response to all this is, okay, we're going to have Ezra Miller in the movie and they're going to do all this, but what we're going to do is we're going to have him like, we're going to do the crisis moment, essentially. We're going to kill him off and Wally West will take over.
No. They're
not. No. Okay. All right, again, we're hearing a lot of speeches thrown at us here, like Jesse Quick, another good choice. Again, we saw her, in the good years of the CW Flash. So it's.
Yeah, I think this is the point at which we've discussed everything
other
than Black Adam.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, again, is Black Adam. I mean, we obviously kind of focus a little bit on the missed opportunities and kind of the negative aspects of the film, but at the end of the day, though, again, I think it did have fun moments. Here's the
thing. It's not a bad movie. As much as I was like critical of the movie, it's okay. I don't get some people saying it sucked or it's like the worst.
It's not an abomination to cinema.
No, it's like I've seen Morbius. Okay.
Yeah, that's an abomination to cinema.
There's like bad. Okay, there are bad superhero movies that have come out lately. There have been good superhero movies, and there are superhero movies that are okay, that are just average. This is an average. This is like how a lot of the Rock movies, it's something that you flip through on the channel or see on a stream search and just play in the background, and like you'll pay attention to the JSA parts, and then everything else just kind of like you just kind of glaze over. Like this movie is.
Hopefully, as John Cohen says, it's not great, but it's not bad. It's fine.
It's okay, like it's passable, but very, very passable.
Yeah.
Very C grade level.
Yeah, it's a C. It's a C. What do you think? C plus, C minus?
It's a C.
It's a C. Just a C, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's but yeah. So overall, it's kind of where we're at on things. I want to thank our lovely commenters for showing up and kind of like directing our conversation a little bit here, and just kind of hope anyone's going to enjoy this in the aftermath here. We got Sonia Pantongia. We have of course Jacob in the comments. We got Spooky John Kelling. Ooh, he's spooky, and. Yeah, I think that's let's do another little pass here to make sure. And of course, I want to thank Rohith Dhar for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime, buddy, anytime. And again, folks, I guess till the next Spoilercast or the next stuff that we have coming up. Yep.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us. Remember, tell them the Man in Black sent you.
Heroes don't kill.